Hello, good morning. It's Monica from Life is Art, and this is the 10 a.m. technique at the Miniatures Around the World online crop. And I'm just waiting for my video to come up here on the side to make sure we're all in the screen. And looks good. Oh my gosh, I managed to get everything set up without having to jiggle anything around. If you're joining me live, just say hello or howdy so I know you're here. And if you're watching later on replay, you can just say replay or just pop a comment in the comments. This morning, we're going to be using some new papers that I just got yesterday from Stampin' Up! And we're going to be using a collection called Unbounded Beauty. Let me just get there. So it's this collection. It's called Unbounded Beauty. It's got a lot of the new in colors in it. It's got Pretty in Pink, Peach Pie, Shy Shamrock, Summer Splash, Berry Burst, and Petunia Pop. So it's very bright and fresh and lovely for the spring and summer. I'm way off to the side here. So we're going to be using that, and we're actually going to be mixing with a stamp set that sort of coordinates with the Full of Life collection, which is called Friends for Life, because I wanted a nice sentiment from here. Now, the project that we're creating today is not necessarily a card. It's not necessarily a layout. It's something that could be used as an interactive element on a card, a layout, in a mini album, you name it. It can even be just a standalone item that's super fun. I think kids will love it. People who like fidgeting with things will love it. It does take a little tiny smidgen of patience right at the very end. So it's one of those ones where you're going to have to be, you have to persevere. It will work. It just takes a minute for everything to come together. So before I get too far ahead of myself, we're going to be making an interactive twist box. And for that, we're going to start out with 2 pieces of paper. Again, we're using the Unbounded Beauty, and I've chosen this pattern. The opposite side is a gorgeous pink, sort of distress washed, kind of floral and foliage, actually. It's all the foliages. But the 2 patterns work really nicely together. So this is going to be the outside of our box, and this is going to be seen a little bit on the inside of our box. So let's get started. The first piece we're going to work with is this longer piece, which is 12 inches by 3 inches or 3 inches by 12 inches, whichever way you want to go. So this is sort of the largest size of this interactive twist box that you can make with a 12 by 12 sheet of DSP. And I'm using DSP as opposed to cardstock. I have tried it both ways, and the interactive element actually works better with the DSP. So usually we think interactive element, you want it sturdy, let's use cardstock. But the DSP works better for this. So our first piece is 3 inches by 12 inches. The second piece we need is 3 inches by 10 inches. And something else new that I got in my order yesterday, so using it on camera live for the first time, is the scoring tool. So let me just bring this up here. So you know me, normally I use a ruler and a bone folder to do my scoring because I didn't own one of these, but now I have one. So now we're going to try it out. I need to remind myself not to push too hard because, as you know, when you're using just a ruler and a bone folder, you have to give it a good amount of push to create those score lines because it's very solid behind when you're using your mat. But this, because it's got grooves behind, if I push too hard, which I might just do, I will end up tearing my paper because, you just don't know how strong you are until you try to use a scoreboard for the first time. So I've got my 3 inch by 12 inch or 12 inch by 3 inch piece of paper. And I'm going to start scoring at 1.5. So we're going to score at 1.5. Of course, on camera for the first time, I'm sure to make a mistake. So there's 1.5. And then we're going to jump over to 4.5. And I have to keep reminding myself when I was using this earlier, I kept scoring on the inch, not the half inch. So 4.5 is our second score line. So 4.5. And then we're going to move over to 7.5. You want to make sure that your paper stays nice and tight in that corner over there. And then 10.5. And I'm sure many of you have used a scoreboard way more than me. So I probably don't need to tell you what you need to do. So that's our 12-inch by 3-inch piece of paper. We've scored at 1.5, 4.5, 7.5, and 10.5. And I will be writing those measurements down when I post the photos. So you can find those dimensions there. You don't have to try and scribble them down quick. And then on our second piece of paper, the 3-inch by 10-inch, or 10-inch by 3-inch, we're going to do some scoring on this as well. And we're going to start at 1/2 inch on this one. So at 1/2 inch, this is a little bit awkward. This is probably why a lot of people spin it around and do the 1/2 inches. Oops, I'm not going to stay in the groove on this one. 1/2 inch, let's do that twice so we got a good line. So our first one is at 1/2 inch, then 3.5. It's kind of a delicate balance, I think, between pushing too hard and pushing too light. If you push too light, you jump out of the groove. If you push too hard, you rip your paper. Gonna have to find that delicate balance. 6.5. Of course, doing it on cardstock would probably be a little easier because it's less likely to rip. And then 9.5. So I'm going to review those numbers again. So we're scoring at 1/2 inch, 3.5, 6.5, and then 9.5. And that's all our scoring for the project. So we can move this out of the way. I also need to find a place to store my my new tool, my new toy. We'll call it a tool. That sounds more important. Hey Diane, good morning, good morning. Nice to see you're watching. Okay, so we're going to start out with our 12-inch by 3-inch piece that we've scored. And we're going to be doing our folding first. And we're going to be folding all of these score lines that we just created, creasing them down, and we know that we need to fold it with the bump side to the inside, which means we're going to turn it over because this is now the bump side because we made the dent on this side. So we're going to crease on the bump side, or the bump side to the inside. Let me grab my bone folder. And then we're going to go to the next one. Ooh, it lines up so nicely. I always had to be persnickety about whether things were lining up when I did it with a ruler. There we go. And our last line, I still check though. I'm going to always check to make sure that the edges line up. Even though it's done with a scoreboard, I will always check. So now we have created all of those folds going with the bump side to the inside. The next thing we need to do is to create some diagonals. And the diagonals we need to create, if you look at where your score lines are, you've got 2 pieces on either end that are 1.5 inches. And then you have 1, 2, 3 3x3 squares or sections. So in this first 3x3, we need to create a diagonal line going from here to here. Okay? And we need to create it as a valley fold, which means we want, this is a mountain fold because it comes up like a mountain. We need to create a valley fold. So this is going to go down into the valley. The easiest way to do that, so stick with me, is we're going to flip it over. And I'm going to take this intersection here at the bottom, and I'm going to line it up with this, on my mat, it's the 3-inch line, because this creates a diagonal line. You see this big long diagonal line? That's the way we want our diagonal to go. So if you start by lining it up with that, making sure everything is nice and straight across, then you take this whole piece and fold straight up at a 45-degree angle, joining these two crease lines. So this vertical and this vertical, intersect them here. And this paper is lined up vertically along that line. You see how it lines up like that? Then when you push this down, I didn't have it quite where I wanted. Line it up. When you push this down, you will see that it follows that diagonal line. And that means you don't have to try and score on a diagonal. You let your mat help you along with that. So when I turn this over, I now have the wrong fold. I'm going to go this way, but you know, close enough. There we go. Okay, so we want that to be a valley fold. This one's a mountain fold because it goes up. This one's a valley fold because it goes down in the valley. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing on this side. Okay, so we're going to turn it around. We want to make this angle, so we're going to line it up. You can, of course, score from corner to corner. I just think lining it up and folding it with using the grid lines to be a good way. So we're going to lift this side up, make sure everything gets good and straight. Make sure we're right in the corner of that intersection. Line it up, score it down, and then we need to switch it to being a valley fold. So we're going to fold it back on itself. Technically, we've now created a universal fold because it's folded both ways, front and back, but we're going to encourage it to be a valley fold. Okay, there we go. So we have finished all the scoring and creasing on this one, but there's one more step before we finish, and I'm actually going to flip it over to the back side to help me with this because I think it's a little easier to see on the back side. This center 3-inch section, I want to cut out a 2-inch circle on there, but I want to make sure it's in the center because it'll just look better if it's in the center. So I'm going to line myself up on my grid lines here, and I'm going to draw a line that's 1/2 inch in from one of the sides. And I'm going to also draw, let me line it up. It's 12 inches. I got to get it on the lines. 1/2 inch down from the top. And if I do that, that's going to help me get my die, my circle die centered. So I have a 2-inch circle die here. And you want to keep in mind that your die, the cutting part is in the center of this. So you got to kind of center it on those lines and also in the middle of the square. And you can kind of lift the edges to help give you a visual of where the sides are and just get it on there. Now, you don't have to be that persnickety. You could do the by guess and by golly method. We're just going to washi tape that down. Or you could use a punch and just stick it in there and line it up however you please. You could even try to make a center line, but I'm still not so good at lining up center lines. However you work best to find the center of that middle 3-inch section. And then, of course, we're going to run this through our machine and cut out that circle. There we go. All done with this. I've made a few of these, and although I know it sounds like a little bit difficult as I'm saying it, I'm trying to, go slowly and show you all the things so that hopefully it'll go easier for you. So now we have our circle in the center. We've got our mountain folds going all the way around, so you can see that it's starting to form a box, okay? And then we've got our valley folds on these diagonals on the side, and those are going to fold in like that. That's why we need our diagonals going the opposite direction. And if I kind of push those in and push the top down, you can see that it twists around and collapses on itself, okay? That's the action we want. So while we've got it in this position, let's go ahead and just kind of give it a good crease down. Okay? And then we can open it back up. That's just to kind of start it in the right direction. Let's take our second piece of paper that we have scored. We've got our 1/2 inch, our 3.5, 6.5, and 9.5 inch score lines. We're going to fold those with the bump side to the inside. This Unbounded Beauty paper is really pretty, nice and bright. It looks so springy and summery. I have a lovely basket of flowers out on my porch that my husband bought me for my birthday. And this kind of reminds me of it. Purples and pinks. There we go. So we have folded all of those. Again, let me show you that with all those mountain folds, it creates a nice little box with our flowers on the outside. Now you will notice that this side is kind of missing. That's okay. It's on the other piece over there. And then we need to do our diagonals as well. And we want them to be going the same way from this upper left corner to the bottom right. So again, we're going to turn it upside down. We're going to line it up like so. Make sure it's nice and straight. And then we're going to lift it up so that we get a nice 45-degree angle on our diagonal. Make sure everything lines up. Crease it down. And again, we want that to be a valley fold, so we're going to fold it back the other way, technically making a universal fold. There we go. And then we're going to come over to this third 3-inch section. So we've got just the little tab here. We're going to line this one up as well. So we've got our crease line lined up right where it matches that diagonal, because we're using those diagonal lines to help us. You use what you got, and if you got a nice grid to work with, this method really works. And then we're going to line that up. Make sure everything's nice and straight. You can see how that piece lines up nice and straight. This is nice and vertical. And then we just crease it down. The other trick with creasing down a line is, instead of folding it and then starting here and running your hand across, you will find if you do that, that things will shift ever so slightly. But if you crease it down, hold it nice and securely, and then push in the center first and then go out from the center, that keeps things from shifting too much. So again, we're going to flip this over and we're going to fold it back on itself to create that valley fold that we want. Okay, so now if we create our box, minus a side, and then push in those bits right there, it will collapse down just like that. And we can give it all a nice crease in that collapsed position as well. Okay, now we need to do a little bit of something to this. On our piece here, we want to add a panel to the inside, and this is where we can get really fun. If we were doing this as an interactive element for a mini album or a scrapbook page, we could put a photo in here. If we're doing it for a card or just as a little gift. We could put a sentiment. You could also, stamp out a little scene. We're talking about miniatures this crop. And so you could make a cute little scene with all sorts of little critters or things in there. You could put a little printed out poem that you want somebody to remember. If you were doing it as a standalone sort of home decor item, just as a little fidgety fun thing, you could also put a photo in there. I think there's a lot of really cool ideas you can do. Now, you're not going to add any dimension of any kind to this. You're going to keep it flat, so it needs to be stamped flat or something that's printed flat, pretty paper, whatever it is you want in there. So I'm going to just stamp a message, and I'm going to stamp Best Wishes, and this is from the Friends for Life stamp set. So we've got our big best and our little wishes, and I'm going to be stamping it with a brand new ink that I just got yesterday. This is the Pretty Peacock, which is one of the coordinating colors. So I figured while I was doing this, I would also show you a few little tricks for getting your stamp pads ready. I know I did a little video about this earlier on a standalone video, but I thought I would do it again, just for those of you who may not have seen that other video. So I'm going to take my stamp pad, just took the plastic off. You will notice that there is no sticker here at the end to tell you what the color is. If you flip over to the back side, you've got this set of stickers here. I'm going to use my Take Your Pick tool and lift the Pretty Peacock sticker. Going to bring it around to the front. Help myself line it up. I like using the pick tool for this. Line it up, stick it down, just like that. Now there are also French and other languages. Sometimes there's a second English version of the name. Sometimes it's Japanese, and then there's also one that's just the color. So that color one, I like to put that on the inside. There's a little groove. There's a couple ways you can open your stamp pad. You can lift it there, which is a little bit tricky, or you can lay it down, put your hand on this end, and just pop it up, which I find a little bit easier. Now, the other thing is, because this is plastic on plastic sliding in and out, it's a little bit stiff. So a lot of people have suggested taking a birthday candle, or there's a thing almost like a chapstick that people use when they do 3D printing to make all their mechanisms work. I have this pickup tool from Close to My Heart, and I just rub it in the track a couple times, just like that, because it's wax, so it's the same as a birthday candle. And then, look at that. Slides so much easier now. All right, so while we've got that open, let's grab this strip down here at the bottom that's just the color. We're going to open it back up like that. Might as well slide it over. And then in this little groove, there's a little groove right here. We can add this strip so that when our stamp pad is open, we can see what color it is. Because to be honest, the ink pads all pretty much look black. There's a few exceptions, but they do all kind of look black when they're open. So now that we've got that all set up and ready to go, let's bring in our piece of cardstock. This is just white cardstock, and I have cut it to approximately 3 inches by 3 inches because all of our dimensions on here are 3-inch squares. I went just a smidgen shy of 3 inches, like a 1/16 of an inch less, and that will help accommodate for all the bending that this is going to do. If I did it exactly at 3 inches, it would kind of conflict with all the pieces that have to bend. So try to just line it up with 3 inches and then scooch it a hair smaller. So it's like 2 and what would it be? 15/16. And then we can go ahead and ink this up. And of course, I've already forgotten how smooshy the these pads are because it's a little bit different from what I'm used to. And I just smooshed it in there way too hard. So we will see how this goes. I may have to wash that off and try again. So I'm going to scooch this closer to me. We're going to stamp it in the center. Best wishes. Oh, turned out just fine. Okay. Phew. I always forget because it's a new thing for me. And then you're just going to pull that and close it and on to the next step. So that's our pretty peacock. And I really like that color. It's a really pretty color. So now we can bring in that smaller piece, the 3" by 10" piece, and we're going to go ahead and stick this down in that center section. So all the interesting things happen in that center section. If you notice that, on the larger piece, that's where we cut out the circle, and on this piece, that's where we're adding our inside thing. The thing that we're going to see when our interactive box opens, and then we won't see it when it closes. It's very cool. I think anybody who tried making the Impossible box will find that this, although it seems like a lot, will be a little easier than making the Impossible box. Okay, we're going to center this on our middle section here, making sure it's not interfering with any of the folds. Looks good. And then let's do a tiny little bit more on this one to make it a little bit more exciting. We're going to cover this open hole with a piece of acetate. So again, I have cut this the same as I cut that piece of white cardstock that I stamped on. It's 3 by 3, but it's just like a 1/16 of an inch smaller. So 2 15/16, so a hair smaller than 3. And we're going to have to attach this with some really good sticky tape. So I have my red tape here. You can use whatever tape works for you with acetate, but it needs to be something really sticky because, as you know, plastic doesn't always stick to everything. My regular tape probably wouldn't hold it. And we're going to go around all the sides. I should probably be trying to remember that that's a smidgen smaller. So not to put the adhesive right on the very edge, but as close as you feel comfortable getting around all 4 sides, like that. I'm not going to worry about around the circle. It's not that imperative. And then we're going to remove all the backings off these. These are so staticky when you pull them off because they're such thin plastic. So I find the easiest thing is to like push them down on my table to get them off my fingers, because otherwise you sit there for 10 minutes waving your hand around trying to get it off. So then when I'm done, I have all these red little strips stuck to the surface of my table, and I have to go around and pick them off and throw them away. But during a video, it's easier than trying to get it off. Get off. So we're going to take our piece of acetate and we're going to line it up, making sure to stay away from the creases and keep ourselves centered. Make sure everything still folds. Nothing's interfering. Now don't worry about this pencil line. You could erase it if you want, but it's going to be hidden because this is the outside. Nobody is ever going to have any opportunity to see those pencil lines. So no worries about that. Then we need to add a little bit more of that red tape just on these 2 outside edges. Don't worry about these. We don't need them there, but we do need it along these 2 outside edges. So basically where you put the acetate before, that's where you're putting it again, because we're going to have to stick our other piece of DSP to this. And again, with that acetate there, we need something a little stronger. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to bring in our second piece. We're going to remove the acetate from just one side, like that. Then we're going to take this, we're going to turn it over. We've got our little 1/2 inch flap here. We're going to tuck that flap under so that our creased edge is right on the outside, and we're going to line that creased edge up with this outside edge of this acetate square in the center. And so we want to make sure that we don't go over the edge. I always like to lift one side and kind of get that little corner in the right spot. And then we're going to line this up all the way across with the edge and just stick it down. And then hope that we didn't interfere with the other sides. And there we go. Now our next step is to take the acetate off, or not the acetate, the backing off the adhesive on this side. Now this side is a little bit easier. All we're going to do is we're going to fold this last 3-inch panel over, making sure that our tab is sticking out. So our 1/2 inch tab is sticking out, and we're going to take this piece and we're just going to fold it over and lay it down on top of that 1/2 inch tab. And that way we know that everything is square and true. And so now we have our little box starting to form. And if you look through the acetate, you can see that best wishes in there on the inside, a nice little surprise inside kind of element. And now we need to close up the rest of it. So these two 1.5 inch flaps are going to come around and attach onto the outside of the bottom here. So we need to add some adhesive on these. Because this is just DSP on DSP, we can use our regular tape for this, or your liquid glue would totally work. And you want to try and get adhesive right to that crease, not over the crease, but right to the crease. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, like that, and like that. And then we're going to take the backing off. Now this next step, be patient with yourself when you're doing this. You want to stand your little box up as nice and neatly as you can. You're going to bring this side up. And I like to use my 2 fingers, my thumb and my middle finger, to kind of feel that it's staying centered. If you have your fingers there, it's like bracing it. You can't get too wonky like that if your fingers are on the outside of this box. And then all you're going to do is fold down this one. You can even put these 2 fingers on either side here to make sure this tab lines up. And you can go to the inside and squish that down. Now that last step of squishing it down is going to be harder with the last, because you're not going to be able to get inside the box. So at this point you need to check, did I put my acetate? Did I put my stamped image? Make sure everything is in there, because once you close this, it's closed. There's no more chances to do anything in there. And then you're going to remove the backing like that. You're going to do the same process. Lift it up, put your fingers on either side to make sure it's straight. And I'm kind of giving some resistance on this side against it. And then you're going to fold this down, lining it up on this side. Now this is the part where it's hard. It's hard to kind of get good squishy contact on that side. You can try to stick your bone folder in from the side gently, trying not to, mangle anything, and give it a little bit of a squish. That sometimes helps. But there, we have created our box. You can see our best wishes inside. Now we need to force it to do the interactive twisting. This is the part where you need to just be patient with the paper and be patient with yourself and pay attention to where everything needs to go. So we've got all of our diagonals running along like this. So all of these sides are going to need to fold in like that, but you're going to have to train it. And so you're going to start just kind of going around and trying to get those angles to fold in and it's going to look like a dog's breakfast for a minute. I honestly will assure you that it's okay that it looks awful when you're doing this. Everything will bulge out in the wrong sort of manner, and it's okay. It will get there. You just have to work at it. Keep going around. Once you've done it once, it will just pop down easily. Okay, now when you get it to about this point, you can start trying to force it to twist. And you're twisting in the direction. Of course, I'm doing it on live camera. You can see on the inside that it's starting to twist. Okay, this is why if you did see, there it goes. If you did everything with liquid glue, you're going to need to wait before you get to this step. You need everything to be solidly glued. Okay, now once you've done that for the first time, you're going to do this. You're going to give everything super duper creases. Just go over everything a bunch of times, and then you're going to play with it, because the more you play with it, the better it will get. So when you lift this, you lift it up and you twist it at the same time. I creased it so hard it doesn't want to come back up. There we go. Pops it up. And then see how it will now just kind of pop. So we're going to just do that several times. Now, if you were going to put this into a card, you would want to do this a bunch of times to get it to be really good at twisting and popping up, so that the person who gets it understands what they're supposed to do. But I think that is super cute. You can create like a little diorama in there with some little images. You can put your message in there. You can put a photo in there. So if you think about having this on a page in an interactive album or in a scrapbook, you're going to want to add your adhesive to the back, and you're going to have it popped up when you stick it down, so that whatever's on the inside will be showing the right way up. Very important. You don't want it to, end up like this. That's not how you want it, or like this. Same with a card. If you're putting it on the inside of a card, have it popped up, put your adhesive on, stick it down, and then give it the good old twist to pop it down. And I think that is such a fun element. I'm not putting it into a completed project. I'm going to leave it the way it is, because I just really wanted to show you that technique that I thought was super cool. I was really excited about it. And I thought for our crop about miniatures, it kind of had a fun element. And this can even just be a standalone thing. You can have this, on your coffee table, kind of a little conversation piece. What do you do with that box? Why does it look so, so crinkly? Somebody sat on it and you're like, no, it just goes like that and pops down. And I think that's super cute. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing that come together. And if you use an element like this on your scrapbook page or in your mini album or on a card, please take a picture of it and post it in the comments where I post the pictures, because I would love to see what you create. All right, have a wonderful rest of the morning, and we will be on at 11:30 for Chat and Craft. See you then. Toodaloo. Bye.